welcome back to Page Farmstead. In today's video, I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that I get most often about raising chickens in your backyard. One question that I've been asked a few times recently is, what is it that I'm throwing out on the ground after I move the chickens? So I thought I should show you. This is the seed that I'm planting. I found them online. It's Nature Seed. So what they do is make seed blends based on your region and what it is that you want to do with your land. So this is their Pastured Poultry mix for my region. It contains flax, buckwheat, and different varieties of clover. Anyway, it's really beautiful. I haven't had any seed that looked bad. And I'm not keeping track of germination rates or anything like that, but I would say they're pretty good. It's expensive seed, but my hope is that as I continue to plant it and continue to have more and more good food growing from the ground in the pasture, that I'll start to save money on the feed bill. Of course, that's the biggest thing that I pay for to have these chickens is feed. I do supplement all of the chickens that we raise with grain feed, and that is my biggest expense, my biggest ongoing expense with the chickens. That's the thing that I have to sell eggs to keep up with, is the feed bill. As I said, I hope that as time goes on and as this pasture continues to grow better food for the chickens, that feed bill might go down and it'll loosen up a little bit the budget. Another question that I get asked all the time is, how many eggs does a chicken lay? And the answer to that is a little bit complicated. Basically, a chicken can lay up to about an egg a day. However, they'll lay fewer when there's less light, so in the winter, and when there's weather changes, and when they're not feeling that great. So generally, a really good laying hen will lay somewhere around 250 eggs a year. For me, based on a variety of factors, including age and breed and all kinds of stuff, I hope to get a 50% rate every day. So if I have 20 chickens, I'll count on probably getting about 10 eggs a day. Some days there will be more, and some days there will be less. I should probably just note here that we don't do anything to our chickens to make them lay eggs. The way that we operate here is completely natural, and we don't supplement with light or anything else that makes the chicken lay eggs. As a result, we have far fewer eggs in the times of year when there's less light, so through the winter, and especially the beginning part of the calendar year, like in January and February. We have a really much more limited number of eggs during that time. But that's okay. That's an okay trade-off to make, to let the chickens live the way that they're sort of meant to live. Another question that I get asked frequently is, do you need a rooster to get eggs? And the simple answer to that is no. Hens will lay eggs whether or not there's a rooster around. And all of those eggs are eggs we can eat. If you want eggs that you can hatch and have baby chicks, then you'll have to have a rooster. The eggs that you get without a rooster are not fertilized, and so they'll never be able to be hatched and turned into babies. One of the questions that I get all the time is, why do you move the chickens every day? The answer to that is pretty complicated, but I'll try to go through it. That's for a couple reasons. One of them being that I want to use the chickens to help the land, and the best way for me to do that is to move them along. If they're left on one spot for too long, they will really kind of destroy that piece of land's ability to produce while they're still on it. The other thing that's really important about keeping the animals moving is that's what serves as our medical care. So we don't use any type of medicine or antibiotics or anything else to help our chickens get through any illnesses. But moving them is really what we do first to try and prevent things like illness and parasites and all of that. So when the chickens aren't living in their own manure and they're moving every single day onto fresh ground, that's the first thing that helps us prevent all of those diseases and parasites and stuff. we have enough space here that we don't really cycle chickens back onto land they've been on for months at a time. So a piece of land will have a chance to recover from the chickens being on it, but also the chickens will come back then to a clean piece of ground, a piece of ground that bugs and so on have had time to get to and decompose and deal with all of the excrement, and the land's able to absorb all those nutrients before the chickens get back and are back on it. And so then we really lower the parasite load. That's our main line of defense. So you can see here the history of where these chickens have been. You'll see that they've eaten down significantly the plant life as they go along. And every day they move. And depending on the weather and other factors, they do different amounts of sort of damage to the space. So sometimes they really get it eaten down almost completely, and sometimes they leave behind quite a bit. And then of course they leave behind fertilizer in the form of excrement. So what we're doing here with these chickens is we're turning chicken feed into eggs for us and our neighbors and our family, and fertilizer. So that chicken feed, thanks to the chickens, gets converted into fertilizer, which goes back and helps feed the pasture that they're on. I then throw seed back on the ground that they came off of. They're helping to improve the pasture that they've just been on by fertilizing it and making a nice bed for me to plant into. And you can see that it only takes a few days for stuff to crop up. This is buckwheat. And then down lower you can see sprouts of clover. And then this is flax. And if we count the squares, we can go backwards from the coop, we can go backwards to here, and you'll see that this was just 10 days ago that the chickens were here. So in a couple of months, once they've made it around the whole field and gotten back to here, there will be even better food for them to eat because of those plants. So the chickens were here on this ground just about a month ago. And you can see that this buckwheat is coming really, really nice. These little white flowers are the buckwheat. These little purple flowers, this is flax. You see that the buckwheat, if I can get it to focus, the buckwheat's already starting to put on some seed there. I wish that I would have started filming down here a long time ago. It's hard to explain just how much of a mess this area was 4 years ago when we moved here. But I can tell you that every time it rained, there was standing water everywhere. And it was just a muddy mess down here. You can't really tell on video, but this does kind of fall into a localized low-lying area. And so when we get really heavy rains, it gets a lot of water. And that's great for growing stuff, but it had been so mismanaged for so many years that instead what we had was a mud hole. So in that 4-year time period, we've done two major things. Number one is we stopped mowing it regularly. I mow maybe twice a year when things get really long and it gets hard for the chickens to be on it. And then of course the other really big one is we've had the chickens here helping us make this land healthier. And now, even in the heaviest of rains, we get very localized puddles and almost no widespread standing water. The ground is able to soak that water up like a sponge, and then all of this plant life is able to use it over the weeks after the rain. This year, between the middle of May and the middle of July, we had extremely limited rain. It was very, very dry. But everything down here stayed really healthy and thriving, and we were able to grow long grasses and good forage thanks to the deep roots that we've established out here by not mowing so often and allowing the plants to really grow and be themselves. Of course, since then, in the last 3 weeks, we've had 7 days of rain over half an inch, and we've had 4 instances of more than an inch of rain and 2 instances of more than 2 inches of rain. So it has been extremely rainy for 3 weeks, and this field is not wet. It's not muddy. It's bounced back easily. It hasn't really been an issue, and it's using all of the water well instead of drowning in it. So yes, we absolutely love our chickens and we love the eggs that they make for us. But the biggest thing that we can do to help both of those is have better land. And one of the best ways for us to have better land is to have those chickens. So this whole thing of the health of the land and the health of the chicken, it's kind of a chicken and egg situation, but we have to help them work together and manage the way that the chickens use the land to make the land as healthy and bountiful as possible. And in turn, that healthy, bountiful land will make the chickens healthy and bountiful. There's a red-shouldered hawk sitting in this tree, looking down over the chickens. He's looking down over the chickens. You can see he's keeping a close eye. We have a lot of hawks around here, and we have had some issues with hawks getting to our chickens, but that's largely been solved since we started keeping all of our chickens completely enclosed. For the most part, these red-shouldered hawks are not big enough to pose much of a threat to the chickens anyway. But we do have some very large red-tailed hawks around the area that could easily take one of our hens down. Well, thanks a bunch for watching. I hope I've answered some of your questions about backyard pastured poultry. If you have other questions about it or things that I could help you with, just leave a comment below and I'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Page Farmstead.